Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we're looking at Centrus Energy. It is time for another update. And for this stock, we have been tracking this setup within a wave 4, where as long as we did not see a sustained break below the 50% retracement at $151.50, we could still favor continuation to higher prices within wave 5 to significantly higher prices, potentially still looking within this wave 5 to see even maybe a 5x materialize. A 5x might be a bit much, but towards that area is actually a very realistic outcome for me. Now, so far, we have actually already seen the break of the levels of support. We have seen a dip below the 50% retracement, but this was not a sustained break. So as far as I'm concerned, it has as good of odds to see a bottom and a reversal as it really ever had based on the area of support alone. So from my perspective, the setup currently remains intact. This is by no means a guarantee that it will end up working out. In fact, we had identified a potential bottom already within an initial ABC structure. It had already fulfilled all of the expectations I would have had of such a pattern, right? 5 waves within the wave C, even an initial 5-wave move to the upside, but it failed, and it can fail again. In the end, this is not financial advice, and really any instrument you would choose to invest in has the risk of failure, and you will have to make your own decisions on whether this fits your investment profile, your risk profile, and really anything that is personal to you. Now, I actually have another such setup, actually not as nice as the initial one, but I do see a couple of ways we could be interpreting this move up to allow for an opportunity to still be had, as we are extremely deep within the area of support, and the critical levels of support are quite clearly defined. But before we head into that, I do want to highlight the risk, because while we do still see primarily 3 waves down, this structure is not exactly ideal, is not exactly perfect. What is the issue? Well, primarily the proportions. If I'm to consider the wave 1 to have topped here, this wave 2 would actually have quite a large discrepancy in terms of proportions compared to this as a wave 4. Does this mean that a setup cannot work? Actually not. We do sometimes see waves 4 that end up becoming quite extended, and then I could actually consider the wave 1 to have topped here instead, and this to have been an overshoot, right? An ABC structure, in which case the proportions would line up significantly better. If this is not the case, it certainly could be that we are looking at a different pattern to actually unfold in the case of this stock. But this doesn't actually mean that it cannot still extend higher, and there are scenarios that would allow extensions to significantly higher highs than we would consider even within the white wave 5. I wouldn't necessarily dream of them too much, and I do deem the currently available white area of support to be rather important. If we cannot hold the current lows, we might be better off waiting for a more clear reversal sign, as generating that additional low could actually be just an early signal of significantly lower prices that would rather lead to a failure of the entire structure we see even from a larger time frame perspective than something that would actually still allow continuation to higher prices. If we actually generate lower lows at this point, the momentum of this structure would have been heavily damaged. Fortunately, it doesn't really matter which exact structure is forming from a larger time frame perspective, and that I can actually zoom in and focus on the internal structure, where I am once again looking ideally for the 50% retracement to hold. If not that, maybe at least the previous lows, and if even that fails, there is a high chance we will see significantly lower prices. It's not a guarantee. If it doesn't happen, we can look once more for an opportunity, but I would need to see evidence from a smaller time frame perspective that we can actually trust the structure once more. Now, if I zoom in within this pattern, the move up, actually not ideal. I would have a much easier time tracking this as a 3-wave move up than a 5-wave pattern. So I'm not necessarily strongly convinced of the setup from a smaller time frame perspective. This initial setup was a better deal than what we currently have in place, but this doesn't mean that the opportunity isn't there. I would actually have an easier time tracking this structure as a 3-wave move up as well, which would also imply that this could work out as a wave B, where my wave 1 would have actually topped here, which also means that this, instead of being a wave A, this is wave B and a wave C, might have rather been a wave 1, and we would currently be tracking an A, B, C pattern within a wave 2. The levels of support I would consider for such an outcome would be between $165 down to $151.70, perfectly in line with the 50% retracement we've had for the white wave 4. Well, this might be just a random coincidence, but what I call it is in fact confluence, and in the case of this structure, I am currently tracking this wave C as an ending diagonal, which means it would still be a 5-wave pattern, which means I would actually still prefer continuation to lower prices, but it would also mean that we only need one additional low before a bottom would be in. So based on this assumption, I would be currently watching for a wave 5 to materialize within the current structure. If we want to see maybe some signs that the wave 4 has worked out according to our expectations, I could track the area of support that would be relevant for such a structure, and it would be up to the 61.8% retracement, which is exactly the level that created the rejection within the wave 4, before seeing actually a pretty strong move down. So based on this assumption, I am currently watching for an A-B-C pattern to occur within this orange wave 5, where I could see a more substantial bottom form at any point, which would also mark the completion of my A-B-C interpretation of the yellow wave 2. I will warn you, however, within such a wave C, especially in an ending diagonal, it is not rarely the case that the wave 5 only manages to make a marginally lower low. It might manage to even reach the 78.6% retracement, but I would most likely actually expect it to hold even the yellow area of support I would have for such an interpretation. Now, given that we have so far managed to hold a higher low within this decline, we could maybe even consider the possibility of this being another overshoot in an ABC pattern. But I do warn you that we only see 3 waves up within the smaller time frame, which means this is no reliable pattern to track. Then, given the sharpness of this move down, it also rather helps the scenario that we would see continuation to actually lower prices, where once again I would be watching for a wave B correction and then a wave C to complete such a pattern. From this expectations perspective, the levels of resistance I would be watching out for would go all the way up to the 78.6% retracement at $173.50. If we manage to get a sustained break above that, well, that would be our early indication that a bottom could rather be in already, and that it is more likely to see direct extensions to higher prices, potentially within this yellow wave 3. And for now, I actually don't have much else to add. You have all the levels that we should really care about. Primarily, I do not want to see a sustained break below the 78.6% retracement in yellow, but certainly I do not want to see a break below the beginning of this entire reversal, below $145. It is actually quite important to hold these levels, and if we see the break below them, well, there is actually not a small amount of risk that we could see a pretty substantial, pretty large decline to already happen. Yeah, we could actually be considering in that case that maybe this entire structure actually already has a top in, and we could be looking at a larger correction. Potentially within a wave 2, maybe some different structure, it's maybe even something else, maybe something less bearish, but it's certainly detrimental to see the break below $145. So for now, we will stop here. This is about it for this stock today, but if you want even more from me, more opportunities, more updates on this stock, on other stocks within the same sector, within other sectors, I'm actually tracking quite many. Well, in that case, you can check out the Patreon, but other than that, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.